All right, we should be recording. So, hope you guys are having a great day. So, have a Q&A to go through today, but first thing is I wanted to let you guys all know that there are some new workouts uploaded to the EverFit workout app. So, if you are a part of our workout app community here, obviously in the iThrive Collective, we upload workouts every 4 weeks into there. So, new round of workouts uploaded. There are some new exercises for some of these workouts this time around, going back up to the higher rep range too. So hopefully, you guys had really crushed it the past few months and really crushed, especially last month with the slightly lower rep range. But new workouts uploaded, so be on the lookout for those, and you could start those Monday, the January 27th. As I'm recording this. So let's dive into the questions. Let's just go ahead and get into it and have a couple of questions that are going to be really good questions to um, answer in here, and then also I might talk a little bit about an experience I had like about a week or so ago, prepping for my powerlifting meet and my weight cutting process because. I have a lot of conversations with clients about the scale. Everyone's always freaking out about it. And I think sharing this experience I had with weight cutting and everything really highlights the scale and what it's good for and what it's not good for pretty well. So, first question. Um, Stephanie asked, well, I made a post asking, what were you struggling with? What issues were you having? And she said drinking water. So maybe not necessarily a question, but I'm assuming she was referring to this is something she's struggling with. One thing I would love to with these Q&As, for one, Stephanie, you are a one-on-one client, so you are able to just message me directly one-on-one with these questions if you're struggling with something. So don't forget that too. But I'll answer it here too, just so like everyone can hear my answer as well. But a little bit more context too with something like that is great. So like if you're struggling with drinking water, that's great, but why exactly are you struggling? Like what exactly is the hard part? A little bit more detail there is really helpful so I can pinpoint my answer to just help you a little bit better. But in general, there are like three or four different reasons why somebody might be struggling with drinking enough water. One is that you feel like you don't have the time to do it. Number two is that you don't remember to do it. Number three is that you don't really like the taste of water, so drinking more water just isn't enjoyable to you. That's number three. And I guess number four is that it's just hard to keep track of, maybe. Like if you're trying to get in 3/4 of a gallon or a gallon of water, it might be hard to keep track of. So, those are really the four big issues people have with drinking water. Number one, the issue of, and I can't remember what order I said these in. Number one is that you don't have time to drink water. If, like, let's say you have a job where, you're at your desk and you literally are not allowed to go up and use the restroom, every hour or so, or however often you have to go when you are constantly drinking water, then you really want to load up on water in the morning when you first wake up, or really load up on water maybe like right when you get off work. So immediately after work, that way you drink a lot of water, and then by the time you actually have to use the restroom, maybe you're home and you're in the comfort of your own home and own bathroom at that point. Or in the evening once you're already done with work, making sure like right when you get home, really loading up on as much water as you can. And you don't have to drink a whole gallon right when you get home, but really loading up on water, as much as you can. That way, like you're drinking enough right when you get home to where you're getting a bulk of your water in, but then you're also able to like use the restroom the next, 2, 3, 4 hours until you go to bed. So you're not drinking a ton of water right before you put your head down on your pillow. Also, you can try to load up on water like on your lunch break or something when you do have the time to go to the restroom more, or like leading up to your lunch break. Like if you know your lunch break's going to be in like an hour, maybe start drinking a lot of water at work then during that time period. So then, when an hour goes by and you have to actually use the restroom and have to go, you can use that time to go to the restroom, on your lunch break. So just timing it and taking advantage of those time periods of your day where you actually can get a lot of water. And also remember, you don't have to get a gallon. Like People think a gallon of water is the gold standard for everybody, and that's not the case. Most people are perfectly fine drinking about three-fourths of a gallon of water per day, and that's enough. Um, some people, even if you're a smaller individual, can even drink a little bit less and be perfectly fine, especially if you are getting in plenty of fruits and vegetables that have a high water content in that. Or if you're somebody, if you're drinking like protein shakes, that has some water and some fluid in that, that actually in total counts for your total fluid recommendation. Excuse me. So, like, I think there's been this myth and this thing where everyone's like, get your gallon of water in per day, and that's like the healthy thing to do. But like, that's not really the case. Most people are fine with three-fourths of a gallon. So if you don't have the time to drink a full gallon, but you can get three-fourths of a gallon or close to it, that's okay. And look at your like urine color to really be the test of, am I getting enough water per day? Um, for the most part, like if you are going to the restroom and your urine has a little bit of color to it, but it's not like super yellow, like a little hint to it, that's kind of right where we want to be. We don't want our urine to be dark. We don't want it to be yellow necessarily. We don't want it to be perfectly clear either. We want a little bit of hint to it or tint to it. And if you're there and you're getting three-fourths of a gallon, don't overly stress about like trying to get that extra one-fourth. So keep that in mind too. But that's how you manage the time part of like drinking enough water. It's just taking advantage of first thing in the morning, right when you get off work, maybe like an hour before your lunch break, so you can go to the restroom, during a lunch, and just drinking as much as you can then. Um, Number two problem is you forget. And when you forget to do something constantly, what do you think you should probably do? Probably set some kind of reminder. And we have the benefit of having so much technology in front of us, our phones, our computers, if we're, on our computer working, and we can set reminders that pop up as like calendar events or whatever every few hours to say, hey, drink 20 ounces of water. Hey, drink this amount of water. Hey, drink water here, there. So use that, right? If it's something that you're constantly always forgetting to do, you have to make some kind of change of, how am I going to not forget this? And that's by setting reminders, right? Like if you constantly forget to do this or do that, like you're going to set some kind of reminder. So like you don't forget. So you don't have to actually remember to do it. Like you get that in your face that pops up. So that's my piece of advice there, is take advantage of like the resources you have. Could be, like I said, something on your phone that pops up, could be a sticky note that you put right in front of your computer, when you're sitting down for work, that says, hey, drink water every 2 hours or drink this amount of water by this time period. And those can be visual reminders for you too. So do those things. Like don't just sit and constantly every single day forget to drink and then think, okay, I just need to remember harder. I just need to remember harder. Like do actual things, set yourself up for success, set your environment up for success with reminders, so you don't have to remember yourself if you're always forgetting. Third tip with water is, if you don't like the taste of it, add some sugar-free flavoring to it. Like I had to drink a lot of water, which I'm going to get into probably if I talk about the weight cut that I did for the powerlifting meet. But I used the little Mio bottle containers that are 0 calories, that you can squirt in your water. Now, technically, are there 0 calories in those things? There's probably some, a little bit. Like I think if you follow the serving size recommendation where there's 19 servings per bottle, then you're probably close to 0 calories. I think it was 19. When I used it, I probably was using it to where there was maybe 5 servings per bottle. So there probably was some calories in it because I was just using a higher amount of it. But um, uh, like if you're using the rough recommended serving size, it's not worth stressing and trying to like find out how many calories are in there to track. But use those things. Or I know there's like Crystal Light packets that are low in calories, low in sugar, that you can use. Use that to flavor your water, and you don't have to do it for all of your water through the day. Even if you just do it for like half of your water intake, that can be enough to like give you some taste for your water, so you actually look forward to drinking it a little bit more. Don't get so bored with just plain water all the time. So use those to your advantage, and they're perfectly fine to use. Like I think I tried to find the question. I think Shannon asked this question maybe like a week ago after the other Q&A, and I tried to find it to see what her specific question was, but I couldn't find it. But it was something along the lines of like these sugar-free stuff. Like, is it okay to use? I know natural is better. I know not using that is better. But how bad are these really messing with me? And they're really not messing with you at all. Like, if you use them in a reasonable amount, um, then you're not going to notice any like noticeable difference in your health, your body composition, how they're impacting you, even your gut health, all that stuff. Like any kind of study that has shown any negative impact on any of these things has been done in such a insane amount to where like you wouldn't be able to actually physically consume that amount to like see any kind of negative downside from it. So use those things to your advantage, you know, like if you have a bottle of Mio that you squirt, you know, maybe not squirt the whole bottle into like one glass of water, you know, like that's excessive. It probably wouldn't taste good anyway. It probably would be too flavorful, but use them, you know, reasonably. Use roughly the serving size, you know, maybe try to get half of your water intake without using these things. But even if you use these things for your whole entire water intake, you probably wouldn't even see a negative downside to it, even at that level. Like I'm talking like these studies that have shown any kind of negative effect of these like artificial sweeteners that are in there, it's where you're drinking like 20 Diet Cokes a day, like something insane. So with that being said, use those to your advantage to like spice up the flavor of your water sometimes, so it feels like a little bit better to get down, or feels a little bit more tasty. And then the fourth um, recommendation, if you are having trouble keeping track of water, is to get a bigger water bottle. A lot of people have these like 20-ounce bottles, and they're like, okay, I'm going to drink 6 or 7 of these a day, or I'm going to drink 8 of these a day. And that would be so hard to keep track of. I would hate that. For one, like mentally keeping track of 8 different bottles. Okay, did I have three, or am I on number four, or am I number five? I wouldn't be able to keep track of that probably throughout the day. Like, I mean, I could in like the notes section of my phone, but it would be a pain in the ass because you're constantly having to remember, okay, how many did I drink? And then you have to remember to input it in your phone when you finished one. And then also on top of that, you have to get up and refill it every 20 ounces. So you have to refill it, you know, 7 to 8 times a day versus if you just get a big gallon jug, you fill it up once in the morning, you're good for the entire day. That's what I use. I use this big gallon jug, and it even has like little like times written on the jug of, okay, like this is how much water you should finish by like 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. And these are just like guidelines to kind of help you finish it by the end of the day. But I use a big gallon jug, so that way, first thing in the morning, I fill it up, and then it's filled up, and then I just drink from it throughout the day. And it's great and convenient because one, I don't have to fill anything else up the rest of the day. Number two, it's easy, it's just one thing for me to carry with me. Number three is that it gives me a visual cue of how much water I have left. So I can see automatically by just glancing at it, oh, I've drank about a half a gallon, and it is, um, you know, let's say 5 p.m. I need to drink quite a bit more, you know, like the rest of the day, if I want to like meet, you know, my rough water goal or so. So you get a really nice visual cue automatically by just glancing at it. Whereas if you are keeping track of these small 20-ounce bottles, you don't really get that visual cue as much. Like you get a visual cue of what's in the bottle, but like that's kind of irrelevant depending on if you've had 6 bottles of water already or if you've only had two, right? So use a big container. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a full gallon. Even a half a gallon is great. 40-ounce ones are great too. You know, you might have to fill that up, you know, 3 times total to hit your water goal roughly. So I like the bigger container, the better. That way I can fill it up once in the beginning of the day, or even you could fill it up the night before, put it in the fridge so it's ready to go, you know, when you wake up. But I like doing that. And then the kind of my last tip when it comes to drinking water is sometimes like you just have to just do it. Sometimes these things um, feel inconvenient at first, and you're starting, you know, to get into the habit of doing it. Um, and you just have to do it. Oh, another tip: take advantage of your workout time when it comes to drinking water too. Like that should be a time where you should really be trying to be hydrated as well, like before and during your workout. So really drink a lot of your water before you work out, and then a lot of it during it, which is usually a time where like you're not tied to your desk too, right? If you're working out, you're up, you probably are able to make it to the restroom. So I like to try to drink a bulk of my water too, like during my workout, not only for like my performance benefits of just being hydrated during my workout, but also um, because I know it's a time where I'm not trying to sit down and be tied to my desk and knock out a lot of work. But like I said, sometimes you just have to decide, okay, this is something I'm going to do. It's inconvenient at first because it's not a habit to drink this much water. And I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to grab my jug of water and just chug a bunch of water that I'm not used to drinking and do that periodically throughout the day. And eventually, like your body will get used to it, your thirst will get used to it, and it'll become a little bit more of a habit. But like extreme example, last week when I was doing my whole cut for this powerlifting meet, and I sent these numbers to my clients in a client group chat, and they were like, "What the heck is going on?" But my water intake, I had to drink at the highest. I had to drink 2.9, so basically 3 gallons a day for 2 days in a row. And there's no like secret hack around, hey, how do I get this water in? Like if I were to ask my powerlifting coach, like, hey, like what are some tips with getting the water in? It's like just drink the water. Like you just have it in front of you and you just drink it, and like you deal with the possible like negative consequences of, okay, now I have to go to the bathroom every 10 minutes because I drank too much, at this time period. And sometimes that happens, and it's just like sometimes you just have to do the thing, and then there will be some minor inconveniences that pop up as you're doing the thing, and then you just navigate those instead of always like analyzing, okay, there's got to be a perfect way to do this to where there's no inconvenience at all, and usually that's not the case. So keep that in mind too. Second question was from Peggy. This was kind of a detailed question with some parts, but she first asked that she's getting results everywhere, but the stubborn belly area feels like it's not really progressing as far as fat loss. I feel like I should be seeing results, but wonder if stress could be a major factor. She's been highly stressed at work. And I asked for some more context of, okay, like, have you been hitting your calories, your protein? Have you been losing fat overall? Because if you're not losing fat overall and your body weight's not going down, then you're not going to lose body fat in your midsection because like fat loss just isn't occurring at all. So it kind of asked for more context there. And she said, yes, she's losing body fat overall. The scale has been fluctuating by 1 to 2 pounds daily, but she's reached 2 different weight goals that she's had, which is incredible, which is awesome. So awesome job with that, Peggy. But she started at 141 and is now staying between 123 and 124. So almost down 20 pounds, which is amazing. She works out 3 days a week and tracks calories and protein every day. She says, I will confess my calorie intake has been poor. Work has been crazy since December, and I'm bringing work home from me. So I'm sedentary a lot and doing a lot of meetings and trainings. So maybe it's just me. So she did mention something about maybe sending like beginning photos and where I'm at now. Hopefully this helps. So, and also she's thinking about maybe incorporating a day for just core to help with that. So here are my thoughts with this. You mentioned something at kind of like the midpoint of this question where you said, my calorie intake has been poor. I wonder what that exactly means. Does that mean you're not eating enough calories, or does that mean you're eating too many calories, right? Because if you're eating too many calories, or maybe you're just inconsistent with the level of calories you need for your fat loss phase, then that might be the big answer there. It's just our calorie intake isn't as consistent as what it was before. So we're not losing as much body fat overall. Like maybe you've lost, 18 pounds so far, but maybe you just need to lose more body fat overall for it to start to, come from your midsection. And, we just need to get back to hitting our calories consistently, tracking our food a little bit more, and then the body fat will eventually start coming off from our midsection. So that's kind of one potential answer to this question, is that like our calorie intake maybe isn't as consistent because we're stressed, so we're maybe overeating or this or that, or maybe we're not quite reaching our goals as much as before. So like fat loss overall isn't occurring as much, and if it's not occurring as much overall, it's not going to occur as much in our midsection then. So that's one potential answer. You did mention too that you're bringing home work, so you're sedentary a lot. So curious, like where your steps look compared to where they looked before. If you were consistently losing weight, maybe 1 pound of fat, let's say on average per week, getting 13,000 steps in, and now your steps are at like 7 or 8,000 some days because you're just bringing work home, sitting on your computer and doing that. then that could be contributing to this too. Not that like steps magically burn belly fat, but steps burn calories, which then helps with our fat loss phase, helps us to put us into a calorie deficit that we need for overall fat loss. So we might not be losing as much overall fat because of that, because we're just less active. So that's kind of another possible explanation. Um, you mentioned some other things as far as like stress from work. Now, stress can play a role in our body composition for sure if it is really extreme and really prolonged at that extreme level. Stress typically, like high cortisol, constantly, not just like a spike in high cortisol if you're really stressed, but then you're able to relax, but constant high cortisol can cause us to break down a little bit more muscle and can cause us to store a little bit more body fat from the food that we eat, especially in our midsection. Now, if you are eating at maintenance, then you're not going to just magically gain a bunch of body fat, or a body weight, I should say. But it can, if you're consistently breaking down more muscle than the fat that you're burning, you might see some shifts in your body composition in the opposite direction. So prolonged super high stress can cause a little bit of that potentially. Um, also, if you are overeating on top of, having really high stress, that can definitely kind of shift your body composition in that direction too. Also, if you are maybe getting poor sleep, whether it's because you're just working so much or maybe it's the high stress that's causing it to be really hard to fall asleep, that on top of high stress, that on top of our calorie intake some days being a little bit higher and our activity being a little bit lower, can create this scenario where maybe we start gaining some body fat back. So maybe that's what's happening there too, is maybe with all these four variables kind of shifting these levers in that direction, maybe we're gaining a little bit of body fat back. Another scenario is that maybe our body composition is changing in the direction we want, but we're just holding on to extra water because of the stress. So it's kind of hiding that. High stress, like high cortisol, can cause a lot of water retention. Um, and that's typically what people experience when they're like, okay, I'm stressed and I'm gaining weight, or I'm not losing weight because I'm stressed. A lot of times it's that we're just holding on to extra water because of that stress hormone. And it's kind of masking the fat we're actually losing. Like you could lose, a pound of body fat, but you could easily be storing an extra couple of pounds of water. And that can not only make the scale not go down, but it can also make you feel like you didn't gain any body fat too. Like holding onto extra water sometimes hides a little bit of like the visual definition of fat loss that you would visually see because of that extra water retention we have. So it's not that like we should be trying to dehydrate ourselves so we look leaner. That's not sustainable either and not healthy. But it's just something we need to understand that if we're holding on to more water, whether it's because we ate a high sodium meal or we just drank a ton of water or because we're high stress, then that could visually make you feel like, oh, my midsection feels like it's either not losing body fat when it actually is, or it can make it seem like it actually is gaining body fat potentially when it's not. So, all of those things considered, I think one is to check your calorie intake and make sure we're really being consistent with that because you said your calorie intake has been poor. So whether it's super high or super low, getting back to consistently hitting that appropriate amount that's good for your body for fat loss. Number two is getting back to your regular level of activity and not necessarily like workouts for sure, but also like if you're sedentary, I'm assuming you mean if you're more sedentary because of work, I'm assuming you mean you're not walking around as much. So getting back to that level of steps that you were getting before. That's kind of the second thing. Number three, definitely stress management techniques because maybe let's say all of this stress or all of these like lack of changes you feel like you're seeing in your midsection are due to just water retention and you actually are losing body fat. At the very least, like high stress just makes you crave more high calorie foods, which makes fat loss difficult. Also, high stress, like I said, can cause us to not recover from our workouts as much, hinders muscle recovery, increases the um, likelihood to store body fat in your midsection if you overeat. If you don't overeat, it's not going to magically cause more storage in your midsection necessarily, not to a large degree at least. But if you overeat with high stress, it does kind of shift things maybe to there more. So work on bringing the stress down, like making sure there's at least 1 to 2 things you do each day to help de-stress, even if it's just for literally like a minute. It doesn't even have to be for that long. Like I start my day off by reading a page out of these two books that I have next to me, and they're just like little like daily readers, but they help me to like get my mindset in the right space because when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about like, okay, I have all these clients to, answer back to. I have all this content to produce. I have this podcast to film. I have this going on and that going on. I have these client check-ins and all this. So it helps me to just kind of like get grounded first thing in the morning. And it takes me literally like 60 seconds to read each of these pages from these books. So it doesn't have to be something long. Can be reading, can be some kind of meditating, even for just 5 minutes, even just closing your eyes and just taking some deep breaths. And staying present in the moment. Could be just some quick journaling for 5 minutes, but just something that is going to start your day off on like a more calm and grounded note, and then ending your day like that too. Really practicing winding down, like really making it a commitment to where you're not focusing on work leading up to like 10 minutes before you want to go to bed, or even 30 minutes before you want to go to bed, like at least an hour before you want to go to bed. Shut that stuff off, start dimming the lights, put on some relaxing jazz music if that works for you. um, Put the phone away. Don't scroll on social media and read all the stressful posts and everything. Pull out a book that's going to relax you and do that to end your night, even for the last 30 minutes or maybe an hour. And that's going to do wonders for your overall stress level, but also for your sleep too, which is overall good for stress levels too. So do things that actively are there to like bring your stress down. A lot of people suffer from chronically high stress, and they just deal with it and they're like, this is just my life, but you have the ability to change it. And you might say, well, I don't have time. Like I said, I take 60 seconds in the morning to read those 2 pages, and even just that helps me tremendously. I guarantee if you make it a priority, you can find a couple of minutes in the morning to just like take a deep breath, and you'll be surprised at how long like 2 minutes feels if you close your eyes and just like breathe and quote unquote meditate for 2 minutes. Like it feels like so long, and you feel so refreshed after. Like you close your eyes for 2 minutes and do that, and you open your eyes and you feel like it's been 30 minutes. So you don't need a lot of time for it to make a big impact. So really make sure you're doing that, because you can't just sit in this chronic stress all the time. Even regardless of fat loss, it's not good for your overall health. And then I guess my last thing is just remember that, let's say you're doing all the right things and you're fix all of these issues. Sometimes genetically, body fat just takes longer to lose from the midsection. Um, and that's just something you have to kind of accept depending on your genetics. Like me, I store most of my body fat in my kind of midsection stomach area. I kind of always just have a little bit of a pot belly, even when I was like the leanest I'd ever been. And I could like take pictures and flex and almost have kind of a six pack, which is kind of crazy when I look back at these pictures, because I didn't feel that lean at the time. And I felt like I still needed to lose more body fat, but I'm like, man, I was pretty lean at this point. But even when I did have that in pictures, when I would kind of flex like that, I kind of still had a little bit of a pot belly. And it's something genetically where, unless I got to like a really lean level where it was really uncomfortable to maintain, I probably always would have had a little bit of a pot belly. So, not saying that's you necessarily, but just be open to the idea that like maybe my body fat, like my body just stores more fat in my midsection, and it's just going to take longer. I'm going to have to continuously get leaner overall for my midsection to look the way I want it to look. And it just might take more time. And then, kind of the last thing to think about too is, um, sometimes people think they need to lose more midsection belly fat, and they think that they're not seeing progress in that area, but they actually are. So keep that in mind too. Like you tend to be your own worst critic, and you tend to, like ourselves, like even myself, if I'm looking at my own progress pictures, let's say, you find it difficult to be objective and to actually see what's actually happening. Like you kind of look at the picture and you're like, oh, I don't really like how I look. I'm not making progress. And really, if you had like a coach, some outside person who can be more objective, look at this stuff, they can see, oh, like we have actually a little bit more, definition in our stomach area, here and there. Like don't you see this? Oh, if you look at kind of the shape of, your obliques or your love handles or whatever area you want to call it, like it's looking a little bit slimmer. Someone else can point that out who's like a coach, who's objective, a little bit easier than you can typically. So you might very well be seeing changes in your midsection, right? Because I know you said in your question, it might just be how you worded it, but you said, I'm not seeing progress in my belly area. But there's a good chance you probably are if you've lost 18 pounds. It just might be a little bit slower than what you want, but it's still happening. Um, so keep that in mind too. And also, like, I've had some clients who they like have told me, hey, I want to keep losing belly fat. And I look at their progress pictures and like they're super lean in their stomach. They really don't need to lose any more belly fat. So not saying that's you, but just be open to the potential of maybe the like how I look at my body isn't actually how it actually is. And like I might be looking at my body thinking it has more fat than what it actually has, or I might be looking at my body and seeing no progress when actually progress is happening and I just need to keep going and it'll eventually like get leaner, the way I want. So keep all those things in mind. So hopefully that helped, Peggy. And last kind of topic question, not really a question, but I talk to so many people about the scale and how, okay, one day it's up a couple of pounds, even though I've been on my diet perfectly, what's happening. And I want to share my experience last week with cutting weight. And this weight cut was a little bit different um, uh, because the way I did my water manipulation, I ramped up my water versus the last time I've done it, I drank a lot in the beginning of the week and then I dialed it down. But I have notes of everything kind of that I did for this weight cut. And I think it's going to be really eye opening for you because I kind of did the exact opposite of what you would do to lose weight. And I lost pretty much 9 pounds in a 6 day span, which is pretty gnarly when you think about it. Because I didn't eat in a calorie deficit. I didn't reduce my calories at all. I ate about 3,200 calories every single day. So that's one thing. Like if you want to lose body fat to a certain extent, you will have to decrease calories from what your approximate maintenance is, at least. You'll have to probably eat lower than that. And I ate the same amount. So that's weird, right? I lost 9 pounds while doing that. Also, my diet consisted of the last 3 days of the water cut, which those last 3 days, I essentially lost from the time I woke up in the morning to the time I weighed in before my meet, about 3.5 days later. I lost about 7 pounds. So from this 3 day window, I ate nothing but orange juice, chocolate milk, Fairlife chocolate protein shakes, chocolate Hershey candy, and ice cream. That's what my whole entire diet consisted of for basically 3.5 days leading up to me weighing in. And I lost 7 pounds while eating all that, while eating 3,200 calories worth of it. It's not like I ate like, 1,000 calories worth of it. And it's like, oh, well, that's because your overall food intake was so low. No, I ate at my calorie maintenance. I didn't lose any body fat over this whole span. And my weight got manipulated by 9 pounds in 6 days and basically 7 pounds in 3.5 days. And my diet was nothing but, like I said, ice cream, chocolate milk, orange juice, candy, and I feel like I'm forgetting one other thing. Maybe not. Maybe that was all of it. Just that. And like, and this is why I really, really stress, do not get caught up on the scale, especially the day-to-day changes or even the weekly changes. But the reason why I ate nothing but like chocolate milk, orange juice, ice cream, candy is because there are a couple of ways to manipulate your body weight in the short term. One is through water retention. And I did this by ramping up my water intake. I went from normally I drink about 3/4 of a gallon per day. But when I started this kind of water weight cut, or water load, some people call it, but basically a way to cut weight by manipulating water intake. I started Monday and Tuesday, I had 1.6 gallons per day. Wednesday, Thursday, I had 2.3 gallons per day. Friday and Saturday, I had 2.9 gallons per day. So I ramped up my water intake throughout the week. I also manipulated sodium. I increased sodium every day I increase my water. And then basically the last couple of days, Saturday and Friday, I actually decrease my sodium. So, how this happens physiologically is there are different hormones in our body that affect our water retention. And when you ramp up your water intake like that, even if you ramp up your sodium with it, the amount of output that you are giving, so the amount of urine you're creating and water you're excreting, increases dramatically because your body doesn't want to be overly hydrated. So it needs to get rid of that somehow. So I ramp up my water intake while also ramping up my sodium intake, and it ramps that up. Now, those couple of days before I weigh in, when I drop my sodium way down, it actually increases my water excretion even more because now my body doesn't have as much sodium to balance that water. So now already, like the amount of water I'm peeing out is already super high. But now I'm bringing my sodium way down, I'm cutting it in half. So now I'm excreting even more. So, and then I do that the last day before I weigh in, and then I cut my water intake off. I cut it off at like 7 p.m. the night before I weighed in. So I had about like 16-ish hours of just not really drinking anything before I ended up weighing in. But that's like the water manipulation, right? But there's another way to manipulate your body weight too in the short term, which is the amount of gut content or food content in your gut, in your digestive system, which is basically manipulated by eating really calorie dense foods and also eating foods that are low in fiber. So I try to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday keep my fiber as low as possible. Normally, I get about 45 grams, probably of fiber per day. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I had basically 15 grams of fiber per day. I really cut it down because I wanted to make sure I wasn't storing any like food bulk, unnecessary food bulk in my digestive system. And I wanted to make sure that my whole body was basically like cleared out pretty much by that point, by the time I had to step on the scale and weigh in for my competition. So I brought my fiber intake super low, but I kept my calories super high by having things that were either liquid. So I would end up basically extracting the calories from it, and then the rest, the fluid from it, I would pee out. Or things that were very calorie dense. So like chocolate, candy was like really the only solid food I had during that like 3 day window. Like everything else was all liquid. I think protein shakes, ice cream is essentially liquid. It's just solid when it's frozen. Orange juice, all that stuff was all liquid. But the only solid food I had was chocolate candy. So I ate 3,000 calories worth of that stuff. And that probably helped me lose an additional 2 to 3 pounds. Like if I wouldn't have done the water load and the sodium manipulation at all, I probably would have lost 2 to 3 pounds just from manipulating the content of my stomach, the gut cut, and bringing my fiber way down, completely eliminating fruits and vegetables, having no lean meats, having no whole grains, eating foods or drinking foods that didn't fill me up. Like um, just manipulating the fiber content and the gut content of my stomach, I probably lost like 2 to 3 pounds just from that. Um, so like, and I say this and I want to highlight that is because I did like the opposite of what you would want to do when you are trying to lose body fat. Like if you're trying to lose body fat and overall see the scale go down from body fat, you would want to eat a diet that's high in fruits and vegetables, that's high in fiber, that's high in foods that are going to keep you full, that you're not having anything but liquid calories. You're not having a bunch of candy to fill in or chocolate to fill in those calories. So I did the exact opposite, but it allowed me to lose more weight on the scale. So, like, when you're going along your fat loss journey, realize you are not just chasing a lower number on the scale, because you can do that by not even talking about the whole water and sodium manipulation, but you can do that simply by eating a diet that's quote unquote really not that healthy in the long term. By you can fill up your diet with just a bunch of orange juice and candy, and you will lose weight on the scale. But remember, you are not chasing weight on the scale. You are chasing fat loss. And sometimes when we have a few days in a row where we are nailing our fruits and vegetables, and we're nailing our calorie intake, and we're nailing our fiber intake, doing all the things, because fiber just sits in our stomach a little bit longer, which is okay. Like it doesn't make us not lose body fat. It helps us to feel full, but it sits in our stomach longer. And maybe we see a little bit more time pass before we actually see a decrease on the scale because of that. And that is okay. Or maybe you have a couple of days where you actually have extra vegetables and you're like, I'm really nailing my diet, really craving some vegetables, some healthy food, and you have extra vegetables and the weight on the scale goes up by a pound because your body's just, still passing or letting those vegetables in your stomach pass through and digestive system pass through. And that's okay. So don't let these short-term changes up or down in the scale get to you. Don't let them dictate your next set of actions because you can do the exact opposite of what's good for fat loss and see the weight on the scale come down temporarily. But that doesn't mean your body fat level is changing. And then after I weighed in on Sunday, I had this specific protocol that I laid out that I followed to basically rehydrate, get electrolytes back in my system, get carbs back in my system. And within 2 hours, I was back up to my weight, 7 to 8 pounds heavier. So I was literally back up to where I was in the beginning of the week within a couple of hours. And during that time span, from when I started the cut to where I lost this, 8 or 9 pounds to where I gained that 8 or 9 pounds back, my body fat level literally, like, I mean, if you were to measure it on like a microscopic level, your body fat level is always kind of changing a little bit. But in the grand scheme of things, it didn't change at all, even though my weight got manipulated by that much. So don't chase a number on the scale, especially in the short term. If you have a lot of body fat to lose, you'll probably see the weight on the scale go down and trend downward over time, over a span of multiple weeks, maybe multiple months. But when it comes to the day-to-day weights and even like weekly weights, if you are, nailing your variables, it's really normal to see it fluctuate up by 1 to 2 pounds at a time sometimes, especially, if you're nailing, like I said, your fruit and vegetable intake and your fiber intake, that can cause you to weigh a little bit more for a couple of pounds. But it's not body fat. It doesn't mean you're not losing body fat. So don't let those fluctuations get to you. So hopefully, just talking about that kind of helped, your mindset around the scale a little bit more. But I think that is it for this one, and I will see you guys in the next one.